My name is Caroline. I'm 34 years old. 3 weeks ago, I stood in front of 240 guests wearing a dress that cost $11 from a thrift store in downtown Portland. My mother sat in the front row, her face turning from confusion to horror to something I can only describe as complete devastation. She left my wedding before the ceremony even finished, tears streaming down her face, and I felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just peace. What I didn't know when I woke up that morning was that the dress I'd found on a dusty rack between polyester bridesmaid gowns and moth-eaten prom disasters would become the most powerful statement I'd ever make. And it all started because my mother gave away my wedding dress, the one my grandmother made, the one I'd been promised since I was 6 years old, to my sister, the sister who wasn't even engaged. I need to tell you this story from the beginning, because if I just told you what happened at the wedding, you might think I'm the villain. You might think I'm petty or vindictive, or that I took things too far. But I need you to understand the 34 years of context that led to that moment. I need you to understand why that $11 dress meant more to me than any designer gown ever could. And I need you to understand why watching my mother leave in tears was the first time I truly felt free. Before I tell you what happened, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story resonates with you. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time is it there. I have a feeling many of you are going to relate to this more than you'd like to admit. Let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in a small town about 40 minutes outside of Portland, Oregon, the kind of town where everyone knows everyone's business and family reputations matter more than actual character. My mother, Diane, was the youngest daughter of Ruth and Harold Pearson. Grandma Ruth was a seamstress, not just any seamstress. She was the seamstress. She made wedding dresses for 3 generations of brides in our county. Her hands created magic out of silk and lace and tulle, and her work was legendary. When I was 6 years old, I sat in Grandma Ruth's sewing room watching her work on a bride's gown. The fabric was this incredible ivory silk with hand-sewn pearl beading, and I remember thinking it looked like something a princess would wear. I asked her if she would make me a dress like that someday. She stopped her sewing machine, looked at me with those warm brown eyes, and said, "Caroline, I've already started yours." She took me to her closet and showed me a garment bag. Inside was the beginning of a wedding dress. She'd been working on it since the day I was born. Every year she would add to it, more beading, more lace, more love stitched into every seam. She told me that one day, when I found someone who deserved me, I would wear this dress. It was tradition, she said. She'd made one for my mother. She'd make one for me. And if I had daughters, I could pass it down or add to it for them. I cried. I was 6 years old, and I cried because I had never felt so special, so seen, so loved. My younger sister, Melissa, was born when I was 4. She was what my mother called her rainbow baby after 2 miscarriages. I didn't understand what that meant at the time, but I understood that Melissa was special in a way I wasn't. She had blonde hair and blue eyes like my mother. I had brown hair and brown eyes like my father. Melissa was petite and delicate. I was what my aunt called sturdy. Melissa was the baby. I was just the first one. The favoritism wasn't obvious at first. It was subtle, like a slow leak in a roof that you don't notice until the ceiling collapses. It was in the way my mother lit up when Melissa walked into a room. It was in the way Melissa got the bigger bedroom when we moved to a new house because she needed the space for her art. It was in the way my mother attended every single one of Melissa's dance recitals but missed my choir concerts because she forgot. But I want to be specific here because general statements don't capture the weight of 3 decades of being the lesser daughter. So let me give you examples. Real, specific, unforgettable examples. When I was 12 years old, I won the regional spelling bee. I had practiced for months. My father helped me every night, going through word lists until I could spell onomatopoeia and surveillance and conscience without hesitation. The regional competition was on a Saturday in March. My mother was supposed to drive me, but that morning, Melissa woke up with a cold. Not a fever, not the flu, a cold. Sniffles and a slightly scratchy throat. My mother looked at me that morning, her hand on Melissa's forehead, and said, "Caroline, I can't leave your sister. She needs me. You understand, right?" I was 12. I didn't understand. But I nodded because what else could I do? My father had to work. He was a contractor, and Saturdays were his busiest days. So I called my grandmother. Grandma Ruth drove 45 minutes to pick me up and take me to the competition. She sat in the front row, cheering for every word I spelled correctly. When I won, she was the one who hugged me. She was the one who took me out for ice cream. She was the one who told me she was proud. When I got home, trophy in hand, my mother barely looked up from the couch where she was watching TV with Melissa. "Oh, you won. That's nice, honey. Melissa's finally feeling better." I put that trophy in my room. My mother never mentioned it again. But 2 weeks later, when Melissa won third place in a local art contest, my mother framed the ribbon and hung it in the living room. That was the first time I told myself it didn't matter. The first time I minimized my own accomplishments to protect myself from the reality that my mother simply loved my sister more. Here's another example. This one happened when I was 17, and it still makes my stomach clench when I think about it. It was prom season, junior year. I had been asked to prom by Tyler Harrison, who was a senior and objectively the most handsome boy in our school. I was shocked when he asked me. I said yes before I could even process what was happening. I went home to tell my mother, expecting her to be excited to take me dress shopping to help me plan. Instead, she looked at me with this strange expression and said, "Are you sure he asked you? Tyler Harrison? Maybe he meant to ask someone else." I showed her the text message, the handwritten note he'd given me with the text. She pursed her lips and said, "Well, don't get too excited. Boys like that usually have ulterior motives with girls like you." Girls like me. I never asked what she meant. I didn't want to know. My mother took me dress shopping exactly once. We went to a department store, and every dress I tried on, she had a criticism. Too tight, too loose, too bright, too plain. You look like you're trying too hard. You look like you're not trying at all. After 2 hours, she was tired and irritable, and she bought me a navy blue dress that was on clearance for $47. It was fine. It wasn't ugly, but it wasn't special either. 2 weeks later, Melissa mentioned that her middle school was having a spring dance. Melissa was 13. It was a middle school dance in a gymnasium with fruit punch and bad music. But my mother took her to 3 different boutiques, spent $420 on a custom dress, and hired a professional photographer to take pictures in our backyard. When I pointed out the discrepancy, my mother sighed heavily and said, "Caroline, this is a milestone for your sister. Her first dance. Don't be selfish." I went to prom in my $47 navy dress. Tyler Harrison danced with me 3 times before disappearing with Amber Nichols, who was wearing a designer gown that matched her mother's Mercedes. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself the dress wasn't the point. I told myself that I was being dramatic, just like my mother always said. By the time I graduated high school, I had learned to expect nothing. And when you expect nothing, you can never be disappointed. Or at least, that's what I believed. I went to college at Oregon State, 3 hours away from home. I was pre-law, determined to become a lawyer, to be someone who mattered. I worked 2 jobs to supplement my scholarships because my parents told me they couldn't afford to help with tuition. I found out later, after graduation, that they had paid for Melissa's entire 4 years at a private art school in California. $62,000 a year. They told her they'd find a way because her talent deserved to be nurtured. My talent, apparently, did not. But I made it work. I graduated cum laude. I got into a good law school. I met a man named David during my first year of law school, and for the first time in my life, I felt like someone chose me first. David was everything my mother insisted I could never have. He was handsome and kind and successful. He came from a good family in Seattle, and he adored me. Not despite who I was, but because of it. He thought my brown hair was beautiful. He thought my sturdy frame was strong and capable. He thought I was brilliant and funny and worth choosing. We dated for 3 years before he proposed. He took me to the coast, to the same beach where we'd had our first overnight trip together, and he got down on one knee as the sun set over the Pacific. I said yes before he even finished the question. The first person I called was my grandmother. Grandma Ruth screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She was 81 years old, and she screamed like a teenager. She told me she was so happy, so proud, so excited to finally see me wear the dress. The dress. I had almost forgotten about the dress. Almost. But Grandma Ruth hadn't. She'd been adding to it for 30 years. She'd completed it on my 30th birthday, she said, and it was waiting for me. All I had to do was set a date. I called my mother next. Her response was different. Engaged? Already? Are you sure you're ready for that kind of commitment, Caroline? I was 29 years old. I had been with David for 3 years. I was a practicing attorney at a well-respected firm. What did she mean? Was I ready? I think David is rushing things, she continued. Maybe he's after your salary. I was so stunned I couldn't respond. David came from family money. He didn't need my salary. He made twice what I made as a commercial real estate developer. But I didn't argue. I never argued. I just said, "We're very happy, Mom," and ended the call. Melissa called me an hour later, not to congratulate me, to complain. "You're getting married before me? Caroline, I've been dating Jason for 4 years. You've been with David for 3. This isn't fair." Fair? As if love was a competition. As if I had somehow stolen her spotlight by finding happiness first. I apologized. I actually apologized to my sister for getting engaged. That's how conditioned I was to be the accommodating one, the one who made room, the one who dimmed her light so others could shine. David and I set the date for October 15th, 18 months away. We wanted a fall wedding, and we wanted to give ourselves plenty of time to plan. I immediately called Grandma Ruth to schedule a fitting for the dress. "Come this weekend," she said. "I can't wait to see you in it, my sweet girl." That Thursday, 3 days before our fitting, I got a call from my father. His voice was strange, hollow in a way I'd never heard before. "Caroline," he said, "it's your grandmother. She had a stroke this morning. She's at Harborview Medical Center." I drove 4 hours in a state of complete numbness. David followed in his own car, but I couldn't wait for him. I had to get there. I had to see her. She was the one person who had always loved me unconditionally, and she was dying. And I couldn't get there fast enough. When I arrived at the hospital, my mother and Melissa were already there. My father was in the waiting room, his face gray with grief. My mother was on her phone, and Melissa was crying dramatically into a handful of tissues. "Where is she?" I demanded. "They won't let us in yet," my mother said, barely looking up. "They're running tests." I sat down and waited. I waited for 6 hours. David arrived and held my hand. My father paced. My mother made phone calls about canceling her hair appointment and rescheduling her book club. Melissa complained about how uncomfortable the hospital chairs were. At 8:47 p.m., a doctor came out and told us that Grandma Ruth had suffered a massive stroke. She was stable, but unresponsive. They didn't know if she would wake up. She didn't. Grandma Ruth died 4 days later on a Sunday morning in April. I was holding her hand when she passed. My mother was at home because she couldn't handle seeing her mother like that. Melissa had gone to get coffee. My father was in the chapel praying. I was alone with her, just like I had always been alone. The funeral was a blur of casseroles and condolences and relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone talked about what a wonderful woman Ruth Pearson was. They talked about her talent, her generosity, her kindness. They talked about the hundreds of wedding dresses she'd made, the lives she'd touched, the love she'd stitched into every seam. No one talked about the dress she'd made for me, the one that was supposed to be waiting at her house, the one I was supposed to try on the weekend she died. 2 weeks after the funeral, my mother announced that she was going to clean out Grandma Ruth's house. She didn't ask for help. She didn't offer to let anyone take keepsakes. She said she would handle everything and let us know if there was anything worth keeping. I called her that night. I tried to keep my voice calm, even though my heart was pounding. "Mom, I need the wedding dress, the one Grandma made for me. Can you make sure to set it aside?" There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable pause. "What wedding dress?" "The one Grandma Ruth started when I was born," I said, my voice cracking. "The one she showed me when I was 6. The one she's been adding to for 30 years. She told me it was finished. She was going to give it to me the weekend she died." Another pause. "I don't know what you're talking about, Caroline. I'm sure Mother made a lot of dresses. I'll keep an eye out, but I can't make any promises." She hung up before I could respond. I drove to Grandma Ruth's house the next day. I still had a key. She'd given me one when I was 18, just in case. I let myself in and went straight to the sewing room. The garment bag was gone. The closet where she'd kept it for 30 years was empty. Her sewing machine was still there. Her fabric and patterns and spools of thread were still there, but the dress was gone. I searched the entire house, every closet, every drawer, every box in the garage. Nothing. I called my mother, frantic now. "Mom, the dress isn't here." "Did you move it? Where did you put it?" "Caroline, I told you, I don't know about any dress. You're being hysterical." "I'm not being hysterical. Grandma made me a wedding dress. She told me about it when I was 6. She told me she finished it. Where is it?" "Maybe you imagined it. Maybe she never actually made one. Mother was getting forgetful at the end. You know that." "She wasn't forgetful. She was perfectly lucid until the stroke." "Mom, where is my dress?" Silence. Then, in a voice so cold it made me physically shiver, "I don't have time for your dramatics, Caroline. I have to go." She hung up. I stood in my dead grandmother's empty house and cried. I cried for the woman who had loved me when no one else did. I cried for the dress that represented that love. I cried for the little girl who had been promised something special and once again had it taken away. 3 months passed. I threw myself into wedding planning, trying to fill the hole that Grandma Ruth's death had left. I started looking for wedding dresses at bridal shops, hating every single one. They were beautiful, objectively, but they weren't mine. They weren't made with love by the only person who had ever truly seen me. David was patient. He told me we could postpone the wedding if I needed more time. He told me that we could elope, that we could get married in jeans and t-shirts in our living room, that the dress didn't matter as long as I was happy. I loved him so much for saying that. But the dress did matter. It mattered more than I could explain. In July, 4 months after Grandma Ruth's death, my mother announced that Melissa was coming to visit for her birthday. Would I come to the family dinner? It would mean so much to everyone. I almost said no. I was tired of being the good daughter, the accommodating one, the one who showed up even when no one showed up for me. But David convinced me to go. Maybe it'll be different now, he said. Maybe losing your grandmother will bring your family closer. He didn't know my family. We drove down on a Saturday afternoon. The dinner was at my parents' house, a sprawling ranch-style home that my father had built himself when I was 12. I walked in with a birthday gift for Melissa, a designer scarf that cost more than I wanted to spend, and prepared myself for another evening of being invisible. But something was different that night. Melissa was acting strange, smug almost. She kept glancing at my mother and smiling like they shared a secret. My mother was flustered, almost nervous, which was completely out of character for a woman who prided herself on being in control of every situation. Halfway through dinner, Melissa couldn't contain herself anymore. "I have an announcement," she said, holding up her left hand. There was a diamond ring on her finger. "Jason proposed. We're engaged." My father congratulated her. David said something polite. I sat there frozen, trying to process. Melissa had been with Jason for almost 5 years, so an engagement wasn't surprising. But the timing, the announcement at a birthday dinner, the way she was looking at me like she'd won something. "When's the wedding?" I heard myself ask. Melissa smiled. "October 8th. 1 week before my wedding. 1 week. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say something, to point out that I was already getting married on October 15th, to suggest that maybe Melissa should pick a different date, to acknowledge in any small way that this was problematic. Instead, my mother beamed. "Isn't it wonderful? Both my girls getting married in the same month." "The same month," I repeated. "Mom, my wedding is on October 15th. Melissa's wedding is October 8th. That's the same week. Guests won't be able to travel twice. Vendors will be stretched thin. This is going to cause so many problems." "Caroline," my mother's voice was sharp, "don't be selfish. This is your sister's moment. Can't you just be happy for her?" I looked at Melissa. She was still smiling. "Did you know?" I asked her. "When you picked October 8th, did you know my wedding was October 15th? She shrugged. "It's the only date the venue had available." What was I supposed to do? Not get married because you got engaged first? I didn't have an answer. I didn't have the energy to argue. I congratulated her, finished my dinner in silence, and left as soon as was socially acceptable. In the car on the way home, David took my hand. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry, Caroline." "It's fine," I said automatically. "It doesn't matter." But it did matter. It mattered so much that I couldn't sleep that night, or the next night, or the night after that. Melissa was going to get married 1 week before me. All the attention, all the family energy, all the excitement would be focused on her wedding. Mine would be an afterthought. Again. Okay, I need to pause here for a second. Have you ever had a sibling or family member who seemed to deliberately sabotage your milestones? Type your answer in the comments. And if this story is hitting close to home, please hit that like button so more people can find it. Let me continue, because it gets worse. So much worse. August arrived, and I was trying to focus on my own wedding. I had hired a coordinator, found a caterer, booked a photographer, but I still didn't have a dress. Every time I walked into a bridal shop, I thought about Grandma Ruth's sewing room, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to buy a dress from a rack when I should have been wearing something made with love. On August 14th, I received a text from my cousin Allison. Allison was my mother's niece, and we had been close as children before she moved to Texas. We weren't in regular contact, but she'd sent me a congratulations message when I announced my engagement, and we'd exchanged a few friendly texts since then. This text was different. "Caroline, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but I was visiting your parents last week, and I saw something. Please call me when you can." I called her immediately. David was at work, so I was alone in our apartment, pacing back and forth as the phone rang. Caroline, hi, I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this. Tell me what? What did you see? Allison took a deep breath. I was at your parents' house. Your mom was showing Melissa something in the guest bedroom. The door was open, so I looked in. Caroline? Melissa was trying on a wedding dress, an old one, ivory silk with pearl beading. Your mom said it was the one Grandma Ruth made. I stopped pacing. I stopped breathing. What? Your mom gave Grandma Ruth's dress to Melissa. She said Melissa needed it more because she was getting married first. I'm so sorry, Caroline. I didn't know if you knew. I thought you should know. I don't remember hanging up the phone. I don't remember the next several hours. I know I cried. I know I screamed. I know I called David, and he came home from work to find me on the floor of our bathroom, unable to stand. My grandmother's dress. The dress she started making the day I was born. The dress she added to every year for 3 decades. The dress she promised me. The dress she finished just before she died. My mother had given it to Melissa. When I could finally breathe again, when I could finally think, I called my mother. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. My voice was terrifyingly calm. Mom, I talked to Allison. I know you gave Grandma Ruth's dress to Melissa. Silence. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. Stop lying to me. Allison saw Melissa trying it on. She saw you giving it to her. That dress was made for me. Grandma Ruth promised it to me. How could you give it to Melissa? More silence. I could hear my mother breathing on the other end of the line. Then finally, Caroline, you need to understand something. Melissa is getting married first. She needs the dress now. You can wear it after her. After her? After she wears the dress my grandmother made specifically for me? A dress that was stitched together over 30 years? You want me to wear it secondhand, like some hand-me-down? You're being dramatic. It's just a dress. And besides, Melissa is thinner than you. It fits her perfectly. It would need extensive alterations to fit you, and we don't have time for that before your wedding. I felt something inside me go cold. Not angry, not sad, just cold. Like someone had flipped a switch and turned off every warm feeling I had ever had toward this woman who was supposed to love me. I want to talk to Melissa. She's not here. When will she be there? Caroline, I don't think that's a good idea. You're clearly upset, and you might say something you'll regret. I want to talk to Melissa. I heard my mother sigh. Fine, I'll have her call you. But please try to be reasonable about this. It's not worth destroying your relationship with your sister over a dress. A dress. She reduced 30 years of love and labor and tradition to a dress. Melissa called me 3 hours later. I had spent those 3 hours sitting on my couch, staring at the wall, trying to understand how I had ended up here, trying to figure out what I had done wrong, trying to convince myself that there was some explanation that made this okay. There wasn't. Caroline, Mom said you wanted to talk? Melissa's voice was breezy, unconcerned, like she hadn't just stolen the most precious thing I had ever been promised. You have Grandma Ruth's wedding dress. Yeah, Mom gave it to me. It's gorgeous, Caroline. You should see it. The beadwork is incredible. That dress was made for me. A pause. Then a laugh. An actual laugh. Come on, Caroline. Grandma Ruth made dresses for lots of people. You can't claim ownership of every dress she ever made. She started it the day I was born. She showed it to me when I was 6. She worked on it for 30 years. She told me she finished it. It was supposed to be mine. Well, I'm wearing it now. Mom said I could have it because I'm getting married first. It makes sense if you think about it. It doesn't make sense. Nothing about this makes sense. Another laugh. You're being dramatic as usual. Look, if it means that much to you, you can wear it after my wedding. Although, honestly, I don't think it would fit you. You've gained weight since law school. I hung up. I sat there for a long time, my phone in my hand, trying to decide what to do. Call my father? He would side with my mother. He always did. Call the police? It wasn't technically theft. The dress was in my grandmother's house, and my mother was the executor of her estate. Hire a lawyer? I was a lawyer. I knew there was nothing I could do legally. So I did nothing. For 2 weeks, I did nothing. I went to work. I came home. I planned my wedding on autopilot. David asked me every day if I was okay, and I said yes, and we both knew I was lying. Then, on August 29th, I got a letter. It was from my grandmother's attorney, a man named Harold Peterson, who had known Grandma Ruth for 40 years. He asked me to come to his office at my earliest convenience. There were matters regarding her estate that needed to be discussed. I went the next day. Harold Peterson's office was in a small building in downtown Portland, the kind of place that hadn't been updated since 1985. He welcomed me warmly, offered me coffee, and sat across from me with a thick file folder. Caroline, I'm glad you could come. There are some things I need to tell you about your grandmother's estate. I thought everything was handled by my mother. Your mother is the executor, yes, but there were some specific bequests in your grandmother's will that she was supposed to distribute. I've been trying to contact her about them for months, but she's been unresponsive. Specific bequests? Harold opened the folder and pulled out a document. Your grandmother left you several items specifically: her sewing machine, her collection of antique buttons, and, he looked up at me with kind eyes, a wedding dress. She was very specific about it. She described it as the ivory silk gown with pearl beading created over the course of 30 years, intended solely for my granddaughter, Caroline Elizabeth Pearson. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. It was in the will. Grandma Ruth had put it in the will. She had made sure legally that the dress would be mine. Caroline, has your mother distributed these items to you? I shook my head. No, she gave the wedding dress to my sister. Harold's face changed. The warmth faded, replaced by something harder. She gave it to your sister? Yes, my sister Melissa is getting married in October. My mother told her she could wear the dress. He wrote something in the folder, then looked at me. That's a violation of the will's terms. Your mother, as executor, had a fiduciary duty to distribute assets according to your grandmother's wishes. If she gave property that was specifically bequeathed to you to someone else, she has breached that duty. What can I do? You can demand the return of the property. If she refuses, you can file a petition with the probate court. I can help you with this if you'd like. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than numbness. I felt hope. Yes, please, I want to do whatever I can. Harold nodded. I'll send a formal letter to your mother today, reminding her of the will's terms and demanding the immediate return of the dress and other bequeathed items. If she doesn't comply within 30 days, we can escalate. I thanked him. I drove home in a daze. When David got home from work, I told him everything. He held me while I cried. Not from sadness this time, but from relief. The next day, Harold sent the letter. 3 days after that, my mother called me. Caroline Elizabeth Pearson, what do you think you're doing? Getting what Grandma Ruth left me, what she wanted me to have. I am your mother. You do not get to have some lawyer send me threatening letters. This is a family matter. You made it a legal matter when you violated the terms of Grandma's will. The will doesn't matter. The dress fits Melissa. She's wearing it. The will absolutely matters, Mom. Harold explained it to me. You have a fiduciary duty to distribute assets according to the terms of the will. If you don't return the dress, I can take you to court. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then, you wouldn't dare. Try me. More silence. Then, in a voice dripping with venom, if you do this, Caroline, you will no longer be part of this family. Do you understand me? You will be dead to me. You will be dead to your father. You will not be welcome at Melissa's wedding or any family event ever again. Is that what you want? To destroy your family over a dress? I took a deep breath. I thought about all the times I had minimized my own pain to keep the peace. All the times I had accepted less than I deserved because it was easier than fighting. All the times I had let my mother make me feel worthless, invisible, unloved. What I want, I said slowly, is what Grandma Ruth wanted me to have. What she spent 30 years creating for me. What she put in her will to make sure I received. If you won't give it to me willingly, I will take legal action. That's your choice, Mom, not mine. I hung up. That night, I got a text from Melissa. I can't believe you're doing this. You're so selfish. It's just a dress. I didn't respond. I got a text from my father. Please, honey, let's talk about this. You're tearing this family apart. I didn't respond. I got a text from my mother. Fine, come get your precious dress, but don't ever expect anything from me again. I responded to that one. I never did. The next day, David drove me to my parents' house. My father met us at the door, his face lined with exhaustion. My mother was nowhere to be seen. She's upstairs, he said quietly. She's very upset, Caroline. She should be. He led us to the guest bedroom, where the garment bag was hanging on the back of the door. I opened it with shaking hands. The dress was there. But it wasn't the same. Someone, my mother or Melissa, I didn't know which, had altered it. The sleeves were different. The hemline had been changed. Several strands of pearl beading were missing, probably removed to make alterations easier. It was ruined. Not completely. The basic structure was intact. The beautiful ivory silk was still there, but it wasn't the dress my grandmother had made anymore. It had been changed, modified, violated. I closed the garment bag without a word. I took it out to David's car. I drove home in silence. When we got home, I hung the dress in my closet and stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to scream. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of fighting for scraps of love. Tired of being the afterthought. Tired of having everything I cared about taken from me and destroyed. David found me there an hour later. He put his arms around me and asked what I wanted to do. I don't know, I said. I can't wear it. Not like this. They ruined it. Then we'll find you another dress, the most beautiful dress in the world. I don't want another dress. I wanted that one, the one Grandma Ruth made for me. He held me tighter. I know, sweetheart. I know. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let my mother and Melissa win. I wasn't going to cancel my wedding or postpone it or let their cruelty overshadow the happiest day of my life. But I also wasn't going to wear a store-bought dress that meant nothing or a damaged dress that represented everything my family had done to me. I was going to find something else, something meaningful, something that would tell my story in a way no one could ignore. I just didn't know what that would be yet. The weeks leading up to October were a blur of wedding preparation and family drama. My mother, true to her word, stopped speaking to me entirely. My father sent occasional texts asking me to reconsider and make peace, but he never once acknowledged that what my mother and Melissa had done was wrong. Melissa blocked me on all social media and stopped responding to my messages. I threw myself into work during the day and wedding planning at night. David was my rock, handling phone calls with vendors and making decisions when I couldn't focus. Our guest list shrank as family members chose sides. Most chose my mother's. but our close friends rallied around us. On October 1st, 7 days before Melissa's wedding and 2 weeks before mine, I received an invitation in the mail. It was for Melissa's wedding, addressed only to me. David's name was conspicuously absent, with a handwritten note from my mother tucked inside. Caroline, I know we've had our differences, but I hope you'll come to your sister's wedding. Family is family, and this is an important day. Please don't let a silly argument ruin this moment. Love, Mom. A silly argument. 3 decades of being treated as less than. The theft and destruction of my grandmother's wedding dress. A silly argument. I showed the invitation to David. He read it in silence, then looked at me. What are you going to do? I thought about it. I really thought about it. Part of me wanted to refuse, to stay home and let them celebrate without me. But another part of me, the part that had been silenced and dismissed and minimized my entire life, wanted to show up, wanted to look them in the eye, wanted them to know that they hadn't broken me. I'm going to go, I said finally. Not for them, for me. I need to see this through. David nodded. I'll be right there with you. Actually, I think I need to do this alone, just me. Just this once. He understood. He always understood. On October 8th, I drove to my sister's wedding by myself. It was held at a venue outside of Portland, a vineyard with rolling hills and a picturesque barn. Exactly the kind of place Melissa would love, rustic but elegant, perfect for Instagram photos. I walked in wearing a simple navy dress, not unlike the $47 prom dress from years ago, and found a seat near the back. I was surprised to see how many people I didn't know. Melissa's friends, Jason's family, colleagues from her work. The family section was smaller than I expected, just a handful of aunts and uncles and cousins, most of whom avoided my eyes. My mother was in the front row, wearing a champagne-colored mother-of-the-bride dress that probably cost more than my rent. My father sat beside her, looking uncomfortable in his suit. They didn't see me. Or if they did, they didn't acknowledge me. The ceremony started at 4 o'clock. Music played, the wedding party walked down the aisle, and then Melissa appeared. She was wearing the dress, my grandmother's dress, the one that had been altered and modified and ruined. But from a distance, you couldn't see the damage. You could only see the beautiful ivory silk, the pearl beading, the exquisite craftsmanship that had taken 30 years to perfect. My sister was wearing my dress. I watched the ceremony in a strange state of detachment. I watched Melissa say her vows. I watched Jason slip the ring on her finger. I watched them kiss and turn to face the crowd as husband and wife. I watched my mother cry tears of joy, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even bitterness. Just a cold, empty nothing. After the ceremony, there was a cocktail hour on the vineyard grounds. I found a quiet corner and sipped champagne, watching the guests mingle and laugh. Several relatives approached me, offering awkward congratulations on my upcoming wedding, asking if I had found a dress yet. I gave vague answers and moved on. At 5:30, the reception began. I found my seat at a table far from the family tables near the kitchen entrance and prepared to sit through dinner and speeches and dancing before I could politely leave. But then something unexpected happened. My cousin Allison appeared at my table, breathless and wide-eyed. "Caroline, you need to come with me, now." "What? Why?" "Just come, trust me." I followed her through the barn, past the dance floor, past the caterers setting up dessert, to a small room near the back that had been set up as a bridal suite. The door was closed, but I could hear voices inside, angry voices. "What's going on?" I whispered. Allison's face was pale. I was walking by, and I heard them arguing. "Caroline, you need to hear this." She pushed the door open slightly, just enough for us to hear. "Cannot believe you told her about the dress." My mother's voice, furious and shrill. I didn't tell her anything. Melissa's voice, defensive and whiny. She found out from that stupid lawyer. Well, now she's here, making a scene, ruining your day. She's not making a scene, Mom. She's just sitting there. It's creepy. She's trying to guilt you. That's what she does. She always has to be the victim. I felt Allison's hand on my arm squeezing gently. I kept listening. The dress doesn't even look that good, Melissa continued. The alterations didn't work right. The hem is uneven. People are going to notice. They won't notice. You look beautiful. Everything is perfect. It's not perfect. Caroline ruined everything by making such a big deal about it. It's just a dress. I know, sweetheart. I know. Don't let her get to you. This is your day. Yours. But what about her wedding? Is she going to wear the dress after I've worn it? A pause. Then my mother's voice, cold and cruel. Let her. It won't fit her anyway. She's too fat. Always has been. Too fat. Always has been. Something shifted inside me in that moment. Not broke. I had been broken so many times before. No, this was different. This was like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. The final confirmation of what I had always known but never been able to accept. My mother didn't love me. My sister didn't love me. And they never would. I turned and walked away. Allison followed, calling my name, but I didn't stop. I walked out of the barn, across the vineyard, all the way to my car. I sat there for a long time, staring at the steering wheel, thinking. Then I drove home. David was waiting for me when I got there. He took one look at my face and knew something had happened. I told him everything. The conversation I'd overheard, the cruel words about my weight, the final confirmation that I would never be good enough for my mother. He held me while I cried. Then, when the tears stopped, he said, "What do you want to do?" I thought about it. I really thought about it. "I want to get married in 1 week," I said. "I want to marry you in front of people who actually love me. And I want to wear something that tells my story. Not their story. Mine. We can do that. We can do anything you want." The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. I had 7 days until my wedding, no dress, and a plan forming in my mind. First, I called the venue and confirmed everything was in place. Then I called our coordinator and told her I needed to make some changes to the ceremony. Then I started making calls to friends, real friends, the chosen family I had built over years of feeling unloved by my biological one. And then I went shopping. Not at a bridal boutique, not at a department store. I went to a thrift store in downtown Portland, a place I had driven past hundreds of times but never entered. It was called Second Chances, and the name felt appropriate. I walked in with no expectations. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, only that I would know it when I saw it. I wandered through racks of cast-off clothes, past polyester bridesmaid dresses and moth-eaten prom gowns, past sequin tops and leather jackets and vintage band t-shirts. And then I found it. It was hanging on a rack near the back, half hidden behind a rack of old winter coats. A dress. Simple, elegant, ivory with a subtle pattern of small flowers embroidered on the bodice. It wasn't a wedding dress, not officially. It looked like something from the 1950s, maybe a church dress or a garden party outfit. It was beautiful in a quiet, understated way. I pulled it out and looked at the tag. $11. I tried it on in the cramped dressing room, expecting it to be too small or too long or otherwise impossible. Instead, it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for me. I stood in front of the dusty mirror and looked at myself. I didn't look like a princess. I didn't look like a magazine cover. I looked like me, a 34-year-old woman who had been through hell and was still standing. I bought the dress. That night, I sat down at my computer and started writing. I wrote about my grandmother, about the dress she had made for me, about my mother and my sister, and 34 years of being the lesser daughter. I wrote about the theft, the betrayal, the cruelty I had endured. I wrote about what I had overheard at Melissa's wedding, and I wrote about what I planned to do at my own wedding. The words came easily, like they had been waiting inside me for years. By the time I finished, it was after midnight. I had written 12 pages. I showed it to David. He read it in silence, tears forming in his eyes. When he finished, he looked at me and said, "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." "All right, I want to check in with you again. If you were in my position, would you have done what I did? Would you have worn the $11 dress and read the letter at your wedding? Type yes or no in the comments. I want to know what you would have done. And if you're dying to see what happens next, make sure you're subscribed. October 15th arrived, cool and overcast. The kind of Oregon fall day that could go either way, rain or shine, beautiful or miserable. I woke up in the hotel room we'd booked the night before, David already gone to get ready with his groomsmen. My maid of honor, Jenna, my college roommate and the closest thing I had to a sister, was there, helping me with my hair and makeup. "Are you nervous?" she asked as she pinned a small ivory flower behind my ear. "No," I realized. For the first time in my life, I'm not nervous at all. She smiled. "Good. You deserve this. Every bit of it." I put on my $11 dress. In the mirror, I looked simple, elegant, and completely myself. Not a princess. Not a magazine cover. Just me. At 2 o'clock, I walked down the aisle. The venue was a small garden space we'd found at the last minute. Nothing fancy, but surrounded by trees beginning to turn autumn colors. The 240 guests were a mix of our friends, David's family, and a handful of people from my side. Allison, some distant cousins, a few aunts and uncles who had remained neutral in the family war. In the front row sat my mother, my father, and Melissa. They had been invited weeks before when I still hoped for reconciliation. They had all confirmed their attendance. I had expected my mother to boycott, but she was there, probably because the alternative, explaining to relatives why she wasn't at her own daughter's wedding, was worse. I saw my mother's face as I walked down the aisle. Confusion first, as she registered that I wasn't wearing a traditional wedding dress, then disbelief. Then something like horror as she realized what I was wearing, a cheap thrift store dress, nothing like the elegant gown she had expected. I didn't look at her. I looked at David, standing at the altar with tears in his eyes. I looked at Jenna, holding my bouquet and beaming. I looked at the officiant, a friend of David's who had agreed to incorporate something special into the ceremony. I reached the altar. David took my hands. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "I know," I whispered back. The ceremony began. Standard vows, rings exchanged, the usual beautiful words about love and commitment. And then, after the ring exchange, the officiant said, "Before I pronounce you husband and wife, Caroline has prepared something she would like to share." "Caroline?" I turned to face the guests. I pulled a folded piece of paper from the hidden pocket Jenna had sewn into my dress the night before, and I began to read. "I want to tell you all a story," I said, my voice steady. "It's a story about a dress. Not this dress." I gestured to what I was wearing, but another dress. One that was started the day I was born, 34 years ago, by my grandmother, Ruth Pearson. I saw my mother's face go pale. For 30 years, my grandmother added to that dress. Every year on my birthday, she would add more beading, more lace, more love. She showed it to me when I was 6 years old and told me that one day, when I found someone who deserved me, I would wear it at my wedding. I looked at my mother now, directly. My grandmother died in April of this year. Before she died, she told me the dress was finished. She had completed her 30-year labor of love, and it was waiting for me. But I never got to wear it, because after my grandmother's funeral, my mother gave it to my sister. Gasps from the crowd, whispers. I kept going. My sister wore my grandmother's dress at her wedding last week, the dress that was specifically left to me in my grandmother's will, the dress that represented 30 years of love and devotion. My mother and sister altered it without permission, damaging the pearl beading and changing the structure that my grandmother had so carefully designed. I looked at Melissa, who was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. When I confronted my mother about this, she told me it was just a dress. When I fought to get it back, she told me I was being selfish and dramatic. When I retrieved what was left of it, damaged, altered, no longer what my grandmother intended, she told me I was dead to her. My mother was crying now. Good. Last week, at my sister's wedding, I overheard a conversation. My mother and sister, discussing me. My sister complained that the alterations hadn't worked, that the dress didn't look right. My mother said, and I quote, "Let her wear it. It won't fit her anyway. She's too fat, always has been." The whispers grew louder. I saw relatives looking at my mother, at Melissa, with new eyes. So here I am, on my wedding day, wearing an $11 dress from a thrift store called Second Chances. Because that's what this moment is for me, a second chance. A chance to start my married life free from the weight of a family that never loved me. A chance to stand in front of people who actually care about me and say, I am enough. I have always been enough, and I don't need a 30-year dress to prove it. I folded the paper and put it back in my pocket. David, I said, turning to my soon-to-be husband, I choose you. Not because my family approves, not because anyone else thinks I should, but because you have shown me what real love looks like. You chose me when no one else did, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for that. There was a long moment of silence. Then David stepped forward, took my face in his hands, and kissed me. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said, and the crowd erupted in applause. I turned to face the guests, my husband's arm around me. I looked at my mother in the front row. She was standing. Her face was white, her eyes red, her makeup streaking down her cheeks. She stared at me for a long moment. Hatred, disbelief, devastation, all fighting for dominance on her features. Then she turned and walked out. She didn't run. She walked slowly and deliberately down the aisle, past the guests who parted for her in stunned silence, out of the garden and out of my life. Melissa followed her. My father hesitated for a moment, looked at me with something that might have been regret, then followed them both. I watched them go. I felt nothing. No, that's not true. I felt free. For the first time in 34 years, I felt completely, utterly free. The rest of the wedding was a blur of joy. We danced, we ate cake, we laughed with friends and family, real family, the ones who had chosen to stand with us. David's mother held me for a long time and told me how proud she was to call me her daughter-in-law. Allison gave a toast that made everyone cry. Jenna caught the bouquet. At the end of the night, as David and I drove away in his brother's car, tin cans rattling behind us, I looked out the window at the stars and smiled. No regrets? David asked. None, I said, not a single one. The aftermath of my wedding was in